Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's an Ironman triathlete, two times cancer survivor, nonprofit executive, a mental health and addictions expert, and of course, an author. And he is a debut author and the author of the book Every Mile Matters, none other than Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds. Welcome, Dr. Jeffrey. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure, I would love to. First and foremost, Daniel, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity to share my story and maybe give some folks some tips for navigating not only health concerns but life in general. And I'm looking forward to a very uplifting conversation. So, as you said, I'm a an Ironman triathlete and a two-time cancer survivor. I'm recently an author, and so the book is just out, not too long. Very excited about it. And honestly, writing it was one of the things that got me through the last couple of years. And so we started out talking about my role as an Ironman triathlete, and that was in November of 2021. I am literally in the best shape of my life. I'm feeling great. Fast forward a few months to that April Fool's Day of all days, April 1st. I'm driving down the highway to a dentist appointment. My phone buzzes with a notification. I get to a stoplight and I jump into my healthcare portal. And I scroll through pages of medical jargon that I really didn't understand. But then I got to the punchline. And the punchline was clinically significant prostate cancer likely. And so I found out that I had cancer sitting at a stoplight on my phone. And to be fair, my journey through cancer didn't start that day. I had gone to my doctor for a routine physical. Everything was great, but I'm a big believer in getting checkups regularly, especially given my athletic activities. And so I went and got what's called a PSA test. It's a test done on men to figure out if you've got a prostate cancer brewing. And the cutoff is the number 4. I was just a little bit above that, but my doctor said, look, it's doubled in the past 2 years. And so we should go check this out. So I went through a series of tests, and lo and behold, April 1st, I get the diagnosis of prostate cancer. And look, there are 2 million Americans who will hear the words "you have cancer" in any given year, but it changes you in a pretty significant way. So I go about treatment. Treatment was actually pretty quick. I was treated in July of that year, diagnosed in April, treated in July, back on the road to recovery. In fact, I did in November, the New York City Marathon. So I ran 26.2 miles, felt pretty good, not great. I didn't set any course records or anything, but I was back to exercising and back to doing well. I had become an evangelist for regular checkups, especially now. Since I went for one, I had no symptoms, and I found out I had cancer that would have been a lot worse had it not been discovered early. So I went for a colonoscopy, very routine test. I had no symptoms. I should probably get it, make sure everything is good. And that August, I was diagnosed with stage 3B colorectal cancer. That's an advanced cancer that has spread to outlying tissue. And, I'll tell you, 2 cancers in 2 years is a lot to take. And this one was much more serious than the first. And treatment was going to be more of an ordeal. And so that's really when I started to write the book and began to tell the story.
Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And thank you for empowering us. What was defining moment made you decide to write this book? Every Mile Matters.
So, one of the things about my treatment is that it involved, a fair number of doctor's appointments. People complain about colonoscopies because it's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable, you can't eat for 24 hours ahead of time. I went to more than 80 doctor's appointments in 6 months. So you want to talk about inconvenient, that's pretty inconvenient. But I started blogging about my experiences, and I started blogging because I wanted to spread the word. I wanted to spread the word to men, other men, about prostate cancer and the importance of getting screened and the importance of talking more openly and honestly about these issues. And then the second time, I wanted to talk about colorectal cancer because it's something that nobody really likes to talk about. And yet, the importance of early detection is so critical. So I started down the treatment journey, and the treatment journey for me involved 27 days of chemo. It's 27 days straight and 27 days of radiation, and then a short treatment break, and then several months worth of chemotherapy infusions. And when you do that every day, and you see folks that are struggling, and you see folks that are doing well, and you see folks who wish they had figured out that they had cancer a little bit earlier, you see folks who are there one day and then not there the next because they didn't make it. It hits close to home, and I wanted to tell the story. The other thing is the chemotherapy infusions involve sitting in a chair in a medical office for 6 hours. And that gives you lots of time to think and lots of time to write about what's
Yes.
going on. And so this felt like a good opportunity to share some of those experiences with the world, not only about early detection, um, but how you process, curveballs that come your way, things that you never expected. I fully expected to do an Ironman triathlon and to suffer for 15 hours. That was a given. I signed up for it. 2 bouts of cancer, I didn't sign up for, yet the voluntary discomfort that I was willing to put myself through positioned me for these series of challenges that would include not only the shock and surprise of the diagnoses, but also making it through treatment. Chemo takes its toll on your body. Chemo is a toxic substance. You're putting it in your body in hopes that it's going to target the cancer and not kill everything else around it, but it takes its toll on you. In order to get through, you need some coping mechanisms. You need support from other people, and you need a determination, focus, and grit that triathlon helped me develop.
Well, Mr. Jeffrey, empowering, empowering indeed. How does your story redefine what victory looks like in both triathlon and cancer battles?
Yeah, so there were times when I was training for triathlon, and training for an Ironman means that, on Saturdays, you're out on the bike for probably 5 hours and then running for another two. And on Sunday, you're probably running a 20-mile long run over the course of 4 hours. And so um, that's a lot of time on the road. That's a lot of wear and tear on your body. And it went from I have to do this training because I want to do Ironman and I don't want to die doing it, to I get to. And so I couldn't maintain the same level of activity during chemotherapy. I still maintained some level of activity, but certainly, not 30 hours worth of training a week. And I really missed it. And, if you ever want to develop an appreciation for the ability to move and the ability to exercise, have somebody or something take it away for a period of time, and then you realize the gift of being able to run a mile straight without stopping. You learn the gift of being able to ride your bike and feel the wind blow, across the handlebars. You learn the beauty of being able to go into the open water and just be free and swim for a half an hour. And so it changed my outlook about things that I thought I had to do that instead I get to do. It's a privilege to do those things. The other thing is, when I first was diagnosed with prostate cancer, my first thought was, how am I going to get through this? I'm young. I shouldn't have cancer at this age. And how am I going to get through this? And then I thought back to my triathlon experiences and said, look, I do hard things. I sign up for hard things. I do hard things and I power through hard things. I can do this without any problem whatsoever. And I did. It's almost like, the things that test us become the testament to what's possible. And for me, Ironman gave me the um, just the strength, the power, the confidence to be able to conquer the next challenge that comes along. And when the second cancer came along, yeah, it was a little bit more daunting because it's a more serious diagnosis. It's a more serious form of cancer, and the survival rates are much lower than they are for something, say, like prostate cancer. And so, my athletic experience combined with the first cancer bout did give me confidence to make it through the second bout. And then, look, nobody does this alone. We always say that nobody trains for an Ironman alone because your family makes sacrifices, the people around you make sacrifices. On the day of the race, there's a few thousand volunteers that are there to help you. There's lifeguards in the event that you get in trouble in the water. There's folks to help you fix your bike. Same thing goes with cancer. There's a team that assembles around you, includes both your loved ones as well as medical professionals. And you really learn to embrace that team. And that really became the fodder for the book. Churning out a book is not an easy task either. There are authors who say, yeah, I publish a couple of books a year. That's not me. That's not my goal. This was a really personal book that required me to look inside myself and think about how cancer had changed me. And it did. It changed me physically. There are side effects that I deal with now that will never go away. I am technically cancer free, but there's side effects from the chemo and radiation that don't disappear. Cancer changes the nature of your relationships. Lots of friendships grow closer. Some grow apart, although I didn't experience that, but relationships grow a little bit closer and tighter. Your relationship with your family, right? If you're staring down death, your relationship with your family changes for everybody. And then the other way it changes is spiritually. When you get a diagnosis like that, most of us have thought about, for example, what happens when you die, have thought about a higher power, have thought about a God, if you choose to use that term. But they're not things that people fully wrestle with and make decisions about. Is there an afterlife? Are you reincarnated? That kind of thing. And those are things you start to think about when you're facing a pretty significant diagnosis. And so, I think cancer changed me in so many ways. Um, there are folks out there who will say, cancer is a gift. I don't believe that. Cancer sucks. Let me just say that. But it does teach you new things. It does teach you a new appreciation for life. It does teach you the value of a day, and it makes you think more critically about how you spend your time and the way you treat people. And it makes you think about your spiritual relationships. That is, what does your relationship with the higher power look like if you have one of those? And so it's a life-changing experience, but I also think it's a life-affirming experience if you play it the right way. There are plenty of folks that go to the dark side and suffer from anxiety, depression, and everything else when they get this kind of news. That's not me, and I wasn't willing to let that happen. I also knew in the back of my mind that the battle against cancer certainly is a physical battle. That's, my best weapons are the best medical care that I can get and early detection. But I also knew that it was going to be an emotional battle. And the more I could kind of power up, soak in the energy from the people around me, try to look at the positive and the upsides and develop a real genuine and sincere gratitude for the things I have versus disappointment with the things I didn't have. I knew that would impact not only my mental state, but also my physical state. The way we think about things dramatically impacts our body and the way we respond. And I don't think that worrying necessarily causes cancer. But I'll tell you, going into this, you want every advantage you can get. And if having a positive, uplifting attitude about it gives me even the tiniest advantage, then I wanted that advantage.
Truly advantage and empowering story, Dr. Jeffrey. So, as an Ironman triathlete, two times cancer survivor, and a debut author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Yeah, so in my day life, I have the privilege of running a large not-for-profit organization here on Long Island in New York called Family and Children's Association. I spend a lot of time helping folks that have mental health conditions and folks that are struggling with addiction, whether that be drugs or alcohol. And um, I do that day in and day out, which also teaches me a whole lot of gratitude going forward. Look, above all, I need my health in order to do those things. So I'm hyper focused on my health. I go in for regular checkups to make sure that the cancer hasn't come back. I'm certainly promoting the book. Anyone who has been on your show will tell you, and if they said otherwise, they're not being honest. You don't really make a lot of money writing books and selling them. But it's the message that I get to share with others that really is the gift. And so it's my intention to make sure that I get the book into the hands of folks who can benefit from that, whether you're a cancer survivor or someone who's been newly diagnosed, or you have a family member that's dealing with a significant illness, or you just want to improve your life. You shouldn't have to get cancer to make changes in your life. And so the book is partially about that. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the word out to folks out in the community. So look, I want to continue to survive. I want to make sure that people around me have the best possible quality of life. And for as long as I can, I want to make sure that I'm spreading a message of hope, of power, of inspiration, and just trying to help other folks out there that might be struggling. So that's my plan for the short term. The long term, we'll see. And look, I love coming on shows like this and talking a little bit about my experience. I find that with any kind of thing like this, the more you talk about it, the more your ideas and thoughts develop around it. And so each time I talk about this, it moves me a little bit further down that continuum of mental health and wellness, and being able to share in a way that's open, honest, and authentic.
Well, good luck to your goals, Dr. Jeffrey, and looking forward for more success as well as more empowering books to come. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be an author, and of course for those people out there suffering from cancer?
Yeah, look, if you're struggling with cancer, understand that you're not alone. Build your tribe, build your support system. Know that the tools that modern medicine has today are better than they've ever been in the history of time, and they continue to get better with the advent of AI and personalized medicine. And just know that you're not alone in dealing with this. As far as my advice to authors, I wouldn't have written this book if I didn't have those two diagnoses. I always knew that I had a book inside me, but I never would have written if it wasn't for the threat of not being able to write it because I was sick. And so it also shouldn't take a significant medical diagnosis to get started. So if you're out there and you feel like I have a book inside me, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, maybe you want to write about your childhood. Maybe you want to write about, something personal to you, or about your family, or about something that you believe deeply in. Get started. The hardest thing, I think, is taking that first step. Whether we're talking about going out for a run, jumping on the bike, the hardest part is lacing up your sneakers. The rest of it comes early. So if you've been thinking about writing a book, you've been toying with the idea, you think maybe there's something you want to share with the world, start now. Simply write the first word. The second, third, fourth, and fifth will come that much easier. I got the book done by starting exactly in that way, and then making sure that I set aside at least an hour each day to work on the book. And whether I wrote 25 words or 2,500 words, I spent that hour kind of reflecting on what I was doing. But the most valuable piece of advice I think I could give is to just get started.
Yes, start now, people. Stop procrastinating. And right. If you have the passion to write. And Dr. Jeffrey, can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, so I would say, in addition to my own, books by Ryan Holiday. I'm a big fan of Stoicism, and so I read a lot of Ryan Holiday's books about Stoicism and the philosophy of life. I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, big fan of Andrew Huberman. Basically folks that talk to you a little bit about life hacks and how to make life a little bit easier and a little bit better.
Thank you for that recommended books, Dr. Jeffrey. And how has this experience changed how you measure personal success?
Yeah, like I said, you don't really you don't make a lot of money writing books. I've always worked in the not-for-profit sector, so money's never been a big motivator for me. I think once you have a significant medical diagnosis, you start thinking more about legacy. I thought a lot about, how would I be remembered? What would people say about me? What would they think about me? Would they say that I was a good guy? I even went so far as to, sometimes as you're going through this, you lose people in your life and you wind up going to their funerals. And it was like almost every funeral became a dress rehearsal for my own. And I started thinking a lot about, if somebody has a funeral for me after I'm gone, what do I want that to look like? Do I want everybody to be sobbing? Do I want them to be happy? Who would come? Who would be too busy? Who would have something else to do? And so it does force you to think a little bit about some of those things, not in a morbid kind of way, but they become a little bit more real and a little bit more proximate. But I think the biggest thing is it's a reminder that we all only have, and I heard this saying recently, on average, we all have about 80 summers in us. If the average lifespan is about 80 years old here in America and elsewhere for that matter, then you've got 80 summers. And so for an entire summer to pass and you don't pursue your hopes and dreams and wishes and do a little bit of what you want to do, then you're wasting time. And we all have this invisible ticking clock above our heads that stays there persistently. And so for me, I think a lot deeper and harder about how I spend my time, who I spend it with, and what I get out of that time. And so, my commitment to public service, my commitment to educating folks, my commitment to advocating for folks who maybe don't have it as good as me, um, was is stronger than ever before.
Dr. Jeffrey, how would you tell to someone newly diagnosed who's searching for their own way to fight?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a couple things. One, stay off the internet. I made the mistake after I was diagnosed of Googling every term in my medical chart, of joining online groups of people who are, struggling with some of the same things. And it didn't lift me up. It didn't empower me. It didn't give me, concrete information. It just sent me down a rabbit hole of worry. And so what I would say is take it a step at a time, line up a medical team that you feel comfortable with, share your diagnosis with others when it makes sense and when it feels right. Um, I also, I hedge a little bit. I have mixed feelings when we talk about cancer warriors. And so the language that we use around cancer is, when somebody passes away, we say they lost the battle. We call ourselves warriors when we're in treatment. We call ourselves survivors if we're successful. The reality is, I, I didn't necessarily see myself as a cancer warrior. I wasn't doing all the work. I had to put up with the side effects, but it was the chemo and radiation that was doing the work. Um, and so, I have mixed feelings about that warrior kind of thing, because then it's like, so if cancer won this round, is it because I didn't fight hard enough? You better believe that I would fight for my life. And so I always worry when we frame it in terms of a battle and use those military metaphors, because I think they can be damaging. And so, look, if you've been newly diagnosed, take it a step at a time. Understand that you're better off having cancer today than you were 10 years ago. It's a vastly different disease. Find a way to reconnect with your spiritual self, find a way to put the right team in place, spend that time with your loved ones, and literally just take it a day at a time as you progress through this. And try to find the beauty in every day, even the days that aren't so good. If you look hard enough, you can find some beauty in them.
Well, Dr. Jeffrey, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please don't listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in the third season, and Movie 101 review of Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Dr. Jeffrey, if you could go back, would you change how you integrated athletes with your treatment and why?
No, I look, I think, my experience, I don't, I took up running marathons, and I've run 15 marathons. I took up triathlon midlife. I don't know why I took it up midlife. I was never an athlete as a young person. I went through my 20s and 30s and into my 40s before I even ran a single step. Probably took it up as part of a midlife crisis kind of thing. But it positioned me really, really well to deal with a race that I didn't even see coming. And so, would I have gotten through these two diagnoses anyway? Yeah, maybe, but I wouldn't have come out of it as strong as I did given my athletic training. So no, I'm very glad that my life has kind of played out the way it did. At the time, I had no idea what was in store, and I don't know what's in store tomorrow. But I've learned to really value and treasure what's here today.
Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or your books itself?
Yes, by all means, you've got the screen up. Every Mile Matters is available on Amazon and at other booksellers. There's a website for the book. It's called everymilematters.com. Please visit. There's actually a downloadable guide that might be helpful to you if you or somebody is struggling with cancer or some other illness, or just really kind of any of life's challenges. So this was a pleasure to be on, Daniel. I really, I'm really appreciate the opportunity to share the story a little bit more, get the word out. And if any of your listeners want to hit me up to get in touch with me, and if I could be helpful in any way, I'm more than happy to do that. But thank you again for having me on.
Yes, people, let's support Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Dr. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.